If you're advertising online, you've heard about UTM parameters. If not, where have you been? The TLDR is that you must use them for all aspects of advertising that you do. Period. Advertisers should have included UTM parameters when running ads. But even if you are not using them on ad platforms, particularly Facebook, you could be inefficient by not using UTM parameters but still get good results because of the way the Facebook Pixel and SDK worked and hoarded data. That all changed earlier this year when Apple rolled out an update to their operating system iOS with release 14.5. With this release, they introduced App Tracking Transparency, or ATT for short, which gives iOS device users control over what data was shared within an app like Facebook or Instagram and externally on third-party sites. Users are shown a prompt for apps installed on their phone asking if they were okay to share their private information with the developers of an app. If they said yes, then data continued to be shared as before. If not, then the app owner no longer gets the data. The impact of iOS 14.5 and the removal of pivotal data like real-time sales, demographic information, and robust analytics has meant that a lot of Facebook advertisers and agencies are struggling with the new environment they find themselves in. I know that to be true because I get hit up a couple of times a day asking me how things are working for my agency. This is followed by a moan at how bad data is and how hard it is to reconcile performance using just Facebook ads data. Imagine their surprise then when I tell them that things are actually going reasonably well, summer lull aside, and that there is no drama. Change, yes, for sure, mostly pandemic related, but no iOS 14.5 drama and no panic. The bottom line is that there is a way for you to get decent data and real-time data. With that data, you can make key decisions about your Facebook ads, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how you can get set up the right way and why you need to be using UTM tracking for Facebook ads. Sound good? Then let's crack on. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Jim. I'm a digital marketer based in the UK, and on this channel, we explore the platforms, strategies, tools, and techniques that help online media buyers be as effective, efficient, and profitable as they can. The first question I need to answer for you is, what is a UTM parameter? UTM stands for Urchin Tracking Module. Why Urchin? Well, in the late 1990s and early noughties, Urchin were one of the leading enterprise analytics solution providers. Google had a fantastic ad product called Google AdWords, but they lacked an analytics tool to help advertisers learn what campaigns had worked and what to spend more money on. Google bought Urchin in 2005. Urchin changed names to Google Analytics and was free to everyone who wanted to use it. Urchin was not cheap, but in using it, we had an advantage over competitors who were not using UTM parameters to track their ads. So how do UTM parameters work? Every URL resolves to a specific location on your website. Even the pages that don't exist have a 404 page error, but it is still a page on your website. Urchin had the idea that when advertisers run ad campaigns, important pieces of information needed to be collected so that they could report on performance of campaigns, ads, keywords, and more. They came up with 5 parameters to track key information that advertisers added to the end of a URL, which identified which channel, ad, keyword would get credit for the leads or sales generated. These extra parameters didn't change where the end user ended up. But on occasions, adding the parameter might change the end result or 404 error. So it's important that you check your work when you use UTM parameters to avoid wasted ad dollars. 3 of the 5 Urchin parameters are mandatory and the other 2 are optional, but highly recommended. The mandatory parameters are UTM_source, UTM_medium, UTM_campaign. The optional parameters are UTM_content and UTM_term. Let's look at each of those in turn and establish what sort of information you should be sharing in each of the parameters by way of best practice. UTM source along with UTM medium are the 2 parameters that I see the biggest issue with when auditing accounts. Many advertisers confuse them and get them round the wrong way. They also have naming convention issues for sources which cause issues, and I'll explain why later in this video. So what exactly is a source? Sources traditionally are used to populate the default channels that show up in Google Analytics. The number of sources should be limited to the number of platforms that you buy traffic on. We enhance the default channels by creating custom channel views, which make the logic more relevant. We do that by using a combination of sources, mediums, and other magic, which I will cover later on. For the purposes of the topic of this video, the UTM_source for Facebook should always be UTM_source equals Facebook. The use of lowercase is on purpose. Google Analytics see uppercase and lowercase as 2 separate sources. If that is something you see in Google Analytics, you can fix it using a filter. but it is better to prevent it happening in the first place. When I suggest this to advertisers, most start ranting, saying they run ads on Instagram or Messenger or Audience Network, not just on Facebook. But all traffic comes from the same source, which is Facebook. I'll show you how you break Facebook ads into smaller chunks later on using Valuetrack parameters, but I don't want to get ahead of myself just yet. If you stick with UTM_source equals Facebook, you'll be doing better than most of your competitors. So UTM_source is for high-level platforms. Next up is UTM medium, and this is used for the specific tactic you are running. The UTM medium is where I've seen the most mess, confusion, and misalignment. Some advertisers use UTM medium equals CPC or UTM medium equals PPC. Those should be used for platforms that would be considered to be paid search, like Google Ads and Microsoft Ads. Because Google owns Google Analytics, they give advertisers an easy one-tick box method to automatically add all the relevant sources, mediums, campaigns, and so on. Microsoft have followed suit. You can override this and use manual tagging, and if you use a platform like HubSpot, you have to use manual tags, but I'd suggest you avoid using manual tagging for Google and Microsoft, and avoid using UTM_medium equals CPC for what is paid social media. We use three types of tactics at a high level for Facebook ads. These are paid social, and no space between the words paid and social, remarketing, which is not retargeting, and video. These three distinct UTM mediums segment the types of campaign tactics advertisers use. If you do anything different, I would love to know what you use in the comments below. Take video campaigns as an example. One of the most successful tactics we run is to use a video view campaign where you have a top or middle funnel video creative. You create an audience who have watched a predetermined amount of that video in time, say 30 seconds, or as a percentage of the total video length, say 50%. So as an example, if you had a 15-second video, the audience would be people who had watched more than 50% of the video, or 7.5 seconds. With that audience, you then run a remarketing campaign because there is a high likelihood that they are interested in your product or service due to their engagement with your video content. Because let's be honest, people don't watch 50% of videos on Facebook by accident. So for campaigns with UTM_medium equals video in the URL, I expect those will have a much lower conversion rate when looking at reports in Google Analytics. The video campaign will make sales, but that is not the purpose of it. You might lose money on those video campaigns, but tactically they are serving an important purpose of moving visitors through awareness into consideration and towards a conversion. If you combine the results of your video campaign with a corresponding remarketing campaign, you get a better view on overall performance. Paid social encompasses many different tactics, including conversions, catalog sales, reach, messenger, and more. As a rule of thumb, I expect the conversion rate for paid social to be higher than video and lower than remarketing. But in trying to do this segmenting of tactics, I see many advertisers mixing up their mediums. They end up with tons of them. This makes reporting, analysis, and audience building much harder to do. So for Facebook advertising, stick with one source, three mediums, all lowercase, and you'll be in decent shape. The last of the mandatory parameters is the UTM campaign. A campaign is usually an initiative that runs across platforms. It might be for a specific event like a Thanksgiving sale. If you have been or plan to be in business for longer than a year, it is always helpful to think ahead and future-proof your campaign data so you can evaluate performance of the initiative year over year. It gets super messy analyzing performance by platform and then by year, and then add in however else you want to look at your data. With naming conventions, advertisers don't think omnichannel. If you sell a product that works across many platforms, you want to see and compare the performance of the campaign, but then drill down from the overall campaign results and look at comparables by source. That way you can see the ROAS from Facebook versus Pinterest versus Snapchat versus TikTok. And if you have your attribution model set up, you can see which of the channels are great at assisting sales or leads to happen. If they have different campaign names because you didn't think ahead, you'll be doing more Excel or Google Data Studio work to provide the overall success of an initiative to your executive team. Success in paid media comes from knowing what works and what doesn't, so you can move money from one platform to another to ensure maximum sales or leads volume. Like sources and mediums, it is better to use lowercase for campaigns, but you can use the filter shown on the screen now to turn any cap case or proper case campaign names into lowercase. My pet peeve with campaign naming is when the agency or the person in the agency add in their name to the campaign name. If you want to be able to segment by agency or media buyer, that is something that you can use labels for. Labels are the most underutilized aspect of media buying, full stop. Okay, so that is the three mandatory parameters out of the way. If you omit any of them, you'll start seeing the dreaded other as the source, medium, or campaign, which is not what you want. So what might you use UTM_content for? For Facebook purposes, we use UTM content for the ad set details. Typically, we will include any geo-targeting, ages, genders, tactics, i.e. lookalike audiences that we've used. I've seen others add in the size of the audience, the interests targeted. It's entirely up to you as to what works best for your business. My only advice is to be consistent with naming conventions of your ad set names and stick with it. Write it down and give it to any media buyer and make sure they don't use anything but the right naming convention, or you'll end up with a hot mess. In Google Ads, the UTM_ term is typically going to show the keyword used. It is entirely up to you to use it for whatever works for your business in Facebook ads. When we run ads on Facebook, we typically use the ad name to populate the UTM_ term. That way we can see what ads are running in real time in the real-time dashboard in Google Analytics. You need to make sure the naming convention you use for your ad names have context. I bang my head against the desk when I see things like new ad, pick one, pick two, or copy of new ad as the name used for ads in an account. You need to make it easy for anyone analyzing the performance to be able to distinguish between any of the ads you're running in an ad set. You need to optimize performance and send meaningful insight across to your creative team for new ad copy or formats or key phrases that move the needle in titles and descriptions. Most advertisers pat themselves on the head and reward themselves for a job well done by adding those 5 parameters to their tracking links in Facebook ads. And they should be happy. They have more information than a significant percentage of the 7 million odd Facebook advertisers that exist. But I have to tell you, there is so much more that can be done by leveraging something called a Valuetrack parameter. When I talk to people about Valuetrack parameters, they assume I'm talking about UTM parameters, and I'm not. Every platform we buy media on has Valuetrack parameters, but every platform we buy media on has dreadful instructions on what they are and why they might be valuable to you as an advertiser. The extra parameters that Facebook have are site_source_name and placement. I've seen some advertisers use the site source name to populate UTM sources and the placement to populate the medium and other messy stuff like that. But most advertisers just don't use them at all because they don't know that they exist until now. So why should I care about using Valuetrack parameters? So on Facebook, there are actually 4 distinct sources of traffic available to advertisers. And at the current time of making this video, there are 20 distinct placements that you can run traffic to, subject to whether you're using automatic or manual placements. I know a lot of advertisers flat out refuse to run Audience Network because it doesn't work. But with a bit of effort and adjustment to the specific sources in the Audience Network and some blacklisting, you can pick up a significant number of incremental sales. If you do some creative optimization as well, you can pick up a lot of the traffic that is available for newer format ad replacements, like Facebook search results, Instagram Reels, Instagram Shop, Messenger sponsored messages, to name just a few. But if you don't segment out these placements using Valuetrack parameters, you won't be able to analyze them in Google Analytics and see performance. But also you won't be able to create audiences in Google Analytics that you can use to run ads on Google. Imagine how powerful it will be if you have an amazingly good Instagram reel that showcases your product really well, and you can create an audience on Google that you can remarket to based on the fact they saw the ad but didn't buy. Or maybe they saw the ad, bought the product, but didn't buy the upsell. Most advertisers treat Facebook ads like it's a moat. If they don't buy on Facebook, then that's the end of it. But really, there is a whole world of opportunity out there for those that have their data ducks in a row. So when it comes to the tracking links to use, there are 2 types of advertisers that we need to cater for. For campaigns, ad set, and ads, Facebook give you the choice of using the names of the campaigns in the URL. This does mean that these details pass in the open. So if you had a campaign that targeted low-income, lousy customers, then anyone who saw the URL with that in it might be offended. Competitors might also see you're using certain lookalike audiences or certain interests or tactics. So if you're the paranoid type, you can pass the numerical ID instead of the name. If you wanted to be super clever, you could then use a filter to do a find and replace in Google Analytics and find the ID and replace it with the name. But that can get quite time consuming. I'm actually fine passing the names instead of the IDs. It's likely mostly only competitors that I would be bothered about. But if all they are doing is trying to steal ideas from seeing ads that we are running, then we don't feel we need to worry too much about them being a competitor. So there are 6 URLs that we use for tracking purposes. The non-paranoid has 3, 1 for each type of campaign, and the paranoid have 3 as well. The only extra piece of information we might need to add on is if the advertiser is using a third-party solution like Hyros that needs additional parameters sent over for their reporting purposes. If that scenario is for you, leave me a comment and I can let you have the extra items of information for them. Other than that, there is a link in the description to where you can get hold of a document with the correct links, but also some explanation over and above what is included in this video. If you stuck with me on the video this far, then you deserve to be rewarded. There is nothing to fill in, it's a straight link to the PDF. I know the video is long, but this is honestly the topic that can sort the mediocre from the rock stars in buying Facebook ads. I introduced the concept of dynamic placements earlier with the site source name and placement. How do dynamic placements actually work? The important piece of the puzzle is the use of double curly brackets. These tell Facebook that whatever the site source or placement are, replace them with the corresponding source and placement. So for the site source, you will see passed across either FB, IG, AN, or MSG, each corresponding to the relevant source of traffic. For the placement, it could be any of the 20 that are available, but a big chunk will probably be Facebook mobile feed. For some data magic, we created custom fields in data exports that we use in Google Data Studio. We extract data via Supermetrics API and report on this in Google Data Studio. And the case example, custom fields turn the shorthand, FB, IG, etc. into readable and meaningful data points that look better in reports. Now that you have this fantastic data, there is still some work that needs to be done to be able to see the information being captured and have it be meaningful in Google Analytics and then Google Ads. But I'm not going to cover that in this video. It's quite technical and it will detract from the topic of this video, which was to explain why you must use UTM tracking for Facebook ads. I'm working on a screen recording video where I'll walk you through the process from beginning to end. So make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification so you'll receive notification when it's ready. The process involves using Google Tag Manager, custom dimensions and custom segments in Google Analytics, and it focuses on Shopify configurations because advertisers who sell on Shopify is primarily who we work with. At that point, your magician levels will be totally off the charts. If you're an agency owner and offer this to your clients, the results they will get from their advertising efforts will be so much better than if you rely on the paltry data your competitors will have access to. This solution is not the only way that it can be done, but it's the way I know, and we've been using it now for over 3 years for our clients. So it is extremely well developed, and as I said, it really gives us great data, even in a post-iOS 14.5 world. The reason it does is that ATT only applies to the app and not to the advertiser. And in using the parameters, we are not identifying people via personal information, and it is data we're entitled to leverage to provide a good experience to end users. If you're still here, this is a tip I think really takes things up a notch. When we set this up, we realized that we were capturing in real time the visitors coming in from Facebook ads or any other platform. We use a platform called Lucky Orange, and there's a link in the description where you can find out more about Lucky Orange and sign up for a 7-day free trial. Using Lucky Orange in our templated solution, we are able to see which source and placement people came from and what their typical journey through the site, hopefully to purchase, look like. We get heat maps, scroll tracking, and screen recordings of all the visitors. And because it's served via Google Tag Manager, we're able to toggle it off if we want to keep the cost of Lucky Orange down, to review it only when we want to. But if you're running a moderately active site, the extra intel you get from being able to see the user interaction is incredibly valuable and worth the investment. I mentioned earlier on that one of the biggest benefits of being able to break the visitor down into smaller pieces was that you're able to then create audiences in Google Analytics that you can then run Google Ads to. The creation of the segments is something that I'm going to cover in the subsequent video in the series, but to whet your appetite, I wanted to show you how it is done, so you'll be ready to rock when I fill in the missing pieces of the puzzle. This video is going to be almost 30 minutes, and I think it makes more sense to talk about UTM parameters for Facebook in a video all on its own. The other parts are platform agnostic and will work for any type of traffic, and the screen recording will be a deep dive and likely another lengthy video. I don't really know how some video creators can cover topics in such a short amount of time, but I felt this topic is so important and I didn't want to leave important parts out to shorten the length. So there we have the guide on why you must use UTM parameters and Valuetrack parameters too with your Facebook ads. I hope your Facebook ad efforts are enriched as a result of watching this video. I'll talk to you on the next video. Cheers.